Train her feet for running. Show her every door and how the windows let
What
the
is
sun
up, you
in.
guys,
Copy
and
out the
welcome
key and
back
tell her this
to
is
another
what we
podcast
done.
with TGOR. We're so excited to be having another podcast. I'm your host, Ruth Rivera, and let's just get right into the video. And just being anxious and overall, for me, I really never had a problem with being anxious, never really had a problem with having anxiety attacks. From my experiences personally, but I will talk about, and this also has to go with, hearing God, and just, the couple things, that goes with that. So, this, it's like a month, probably, yeah, it's been like a month now. I've been through this, I don't know what to call it. I guess it's like a waiting season, but it was also like a confirmation and something I just needed to, spend my time with God. And I really needed to make sure I was really meditating and really having my time with God and really doing the things that I needed to do to be able to have that confirmation in what I need to do in this season of life. And so I had left the church that I was at because I've been praying about leaving, but I didn't know why I was going to. And so I left thinking that I was going to leave forever, thinking that I was just be like, okay, this is it, like God's telling me to go. And so I left. I told people bye because I was like, I don't know if I'm going to see you again. I don't know if I'm coming back to this church. I don't know. I thought a lot of things about my church, and I was just like, I don't know. And I felt like the devil was attacking me with a lot of things to think about that church, and I was like, oh, I don't know what to think. I don't know. And God started revealing to me that I need to start praying more about, did I leave? Was I supposed to leave? And I was like, wow, maybe I do need to pray about that, because I just kind of left. I thought I was done. And I started talking to my mentor, I started talking to my parents. I'm like, guys, I don't know if I was supposed to even leave. And they were like, what do you mean? They're like, you said that it was a God thing. You said it was God told you it's time to go. And I was like, I know. I don't know what to think. I don't know. I never really thought about it. I just kind of left. And they're like, okay, well, let's pray about it. And I'm like, that's gonna be so fun, because I'm the kind of person that loves a good confirmation, that loves, not that necessarily that I love it when somebody comes up to me and gives me a word. Yeah, it's cool and everything, but it's like I feel like I always need a good confirmation from somebody, and I need to be able to hear it clearly. And so I was like, this is gonna be fun. So I was like, God, I don't know how you're gonna reveal it to me. I don't know, man. I'm just stressing out and I don't know what to do. And he was like, well, I don't want you to play a song. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, play worship music. And I'm like, okay. And so I played worship music on my I think it was on my phone or something, or it was I was watching YouTube. I was watching a music video of a song. It's called You Will Be Saved. I think that's how it goes. Yeah, You Will Be Saved by Elevation Worship or Rhythm. I think it's Rhythm. And so I'm listening to that song, and I'm like, okay, this is a good song. I've heard the song, it's good. And he's like, Ruth, shut up. And I'm like, huh? And he's like, listen to the words of the song. Go start from the beginning. And I'm like, okay. And so I'm listening, and I hear over and over, he's like, go to this part of the song. And I'm like this certain like number when you move it. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, and it's like kind of instrumental at first, and I'm like waiting, and then it goes, come as you are, just as you are, it's time to go home. Out of the dark, he loves you. And I'm like, huh? He's like, play it again. I'm like, okay. And it does it again. He's like, play it again. It's like, okay. He goes, now listen about it. Like, think about it. And he's like, do you understand what that means? I'm like, I think so. Like, I don't know. He's like, okay, but now I want you to pray about that part of the song. I was like, okay. So I start praying, and so then it comes along to Tuesday. I was waiting for my parents to be, like, I had a conversation. I'm like, well, I mean, if I did go back, is that okay with you? So I was like, I kind of just forgot about it, and I was just kind of thinking, like, oh, they're not gonna care. They're not gonna let me go back or whatever. And I'm like waiting, and they're like, okay, like, we prayed about it, we talked about it, you can go back. And they're like, don't you want to go back? And I'm just like, yeah, but I mean, I still have to pray about it. So I was like, still in the mindset of praying about it, and I started realizing what that song meant. And I'm like, okay, I don't know, but I'm kind of iffy about it. So then I go to the youth group I've been going to for this past month, and I'm sitting there. I started feeling anxious when I first stepped into the auditorium, when we first got in there, and I'm like shaking. And I look over at my mentor. She's like on the other, she's like in between me and another person. And I'm looking at her, and I'm like, Tamiri, like, I'm like, and she's like, why are you shaking? So I get my phone, and I'm texting her, and she's like, do you want to, like, step out? I'm like, yeah. And so we step out, and she's like, what is wrong with you? Like, what is going on? I was like, I don't want to be here. Like, I need it. Like, she's like, you want to go to Gateway? I'm like, yeah. And she was like, well, I'm going to check with your mom, and then I can take you. And I was like, okay. And so we get in the car. She goes, are you actually feeling anxious? And I'm like, do you see my hands right now? I'm like, and she's like, okay, so calm down. I'm like, I'm trying. So then we get out of the car, and then she's like, bye. I'm like, okay. And so I first see a few people. I'm like, okay. So I check in, and then I go up to a few of the leaders, and I'm like, hey guys. And they're like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I'm back. And they're like, what? I'm like, I think I'm back. And they're like, oh. And they're like looking at my pants. They're like looking down. I'm like, what? And they're like, you're shaking. And I'm like, I know. Like, I mean, I didn't feel about it. Like, I didn't think about it for a second. But I'm like, yeah, I'm shaking. Like, it's been pretty bad. And she's like, okay, well, calm down. Go into the service. Service is starting. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay. So I'm sitting there, and then I see one of my best friends. And she's like, come on, go to the front with us. And she's like, come on. And I'm like, and she goes, Ruth, come on. And I'm like, okay. And so I'm up there, and then there was fast songs, and then there was a slower song, and then there was an oversight. One of the leaders that went up, and she was talking about being anxious and having anxiety, and I'm like, and she was talking about you go to a place where you can call home, but then you go to certain people that make you feel comfortable and make you feel at peace. And like, what I got from what she was saying was that when you're going somewhere, when you're having anxiety, you're gonna message somebody, you're gonna call somebody, you're gonna go to somebody that makes you feel at peace. You're gonna go somewhere that makes you feel at peace. But I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I'm like hitting my, I'm like, I'm not hitting her, but I'm like, it's me, man. I'm like, Sarah, like, and she's like, what? And I'm like, are you listening? And she's like, we started like making eye contact. I was like, And she's like, oh. And I didn't tell her that before I got there I was feeling anxious at the other church. And she's like, she knows that, like, I've been going through this and I've been praying about this, and I'm like crying because I'm like, I felt so anxious, and now I'm at a place that makes me feel at peace. And I started calming down. I stopped shaking, and I'm like crying because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, this is my home. And then I'm listening, like, I'm on my knees, I'm worshiping, and I'm like, okay, let me calm down. Let me just be quiet for a second. Like, I'm excited to be able to worship again, but let me calm down. And I'm like, and God's like, hey, remember that song I told you to listen to? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, come as you are. You can go somewhere as you are, and you are loved and you're welcome there. And they love you for just who you are. It's time to come home. God was saying that it was time to go back to the place that I called home. And I was in a moment where I felt like the enemy was attacking me. I felt free from things, and I knew I was. But I felt like the devil was trying to take me to a place that I didn't need to be at the moment. It's coming out of the dark into a place that you know that you are called there, and you need to be there for your season. Because when I left, I didn't know that. But all of this, it's like, getting a confirmation is a hard thing. Praying through things. That's why I have a mentor, because I can't do any of this on my own. And so it's hard to do that. But going through that with somebody else is something that you do need to have in your life. I grew up in Dallas, Texas, or like in the DFW area, Texas area. So I grew up in Texas my whole life. I was a pastor's kid from the moment I came into this world. I don't think I ever felt like pressure to go to church. I loved going to church, honestly. And that was like my only source of, being around people, because I was homeschooled. And so growing up as a pastor's kid, growing up at church, it never really bothered me. Like, I loved going to church. I never felt forced to be there. And so I feel like it was 2021. Yeah, it was 2021 when I started feeling like really down. I feel like, yeah, it was 2021. We moved into the house that I'm in now, and I was going through like a moment of kind of depression, and feeling lost and alone was hard, because like being the youngest also in the family, like I never really hung out with my siblings. I mean, I was kind of close with my brother, but like me and him have always kind of been close, and just because we're close in age, but like I never really had like somebody I could like talk to. Like I never felt comfortable to talk to anybody. But in 2021 I started feeling like alone. I was going through a moment of depression. Some of it was just kind of like a stupid depression, because it was just like a breakup kind of thing. I felt so I just didn't even think, honestly. And so I also started having like a fear of death and all that stuff, and like not knowing what was gonna happen. And then a few months later at church, I started thinking, I was like, I really want to get into knowing God. I want to be on fire for God like other people are. And so having that mindset, I was like, okay, so I'm just going to rededicate my life. So I rededicated my life to the Lord, and I was like, I'm going to get baptized again. And so I got baptized again, and I felt refreshed. I felt different. But then from 2021 to 2022, January 1st, 2022, yeah. Was it? Yeah. We got a call that my grandma passed away. So that call was like a hard moment for me. Just cause like she was like somebody that I really looked up to. Somebody I really wanted to be when I grew up. And I was able to like have conversations with her. I felt like I kind of just like put her to the side and totally like forgot about her because she lived so far away. Like I was never able to like have that much contact with her. Like I didn't really talk to her as much. And so then when we went to New York for her funeral, we had an open casket. I had a really hard time going inside because like I was like, I'm gonna see her and she's not gonna be awake. She's not gonna be alive. And it was really hard for me because I felt like I started feeling like, oh my gosh, she's actually gone. And I didn't have that feeling when I was here because I wasn't around her that much. So it was hard for me to believe. So going in, I remember, feeling so broken inside and feeling so lost. I was like, I'm not gonna look at her. I can't look at her. And then I walk in with my sister and I saw a glimpse of her. I like glanced and I saw her and I was like, oh my God, like she's gone. And like I had to close my eyes and I couldn't see, and I remember screaming and crying, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's gone. Like I don't know what to do. Like oh my God, like I was just screaming. And I remember later on we had her service that we had for her to remember her and all that stuff. And I was sitting there with my little cousin and I was realizing like I want to be like her when I grow up. When people were telling stories about her, like they were saying about how good of a person she was. She was such a good person. And she always loved no matter what. I feel like that started off my journey of realizing what I wanted to do with my life. And I wanted to be a preacher because that's what my abuelita did. Not so much what my abuela did, but what my abuelita did, she had her church and she prophesied over people. She prayed over people. She was a prayer warrior, and I want to be like her one day. 2022, I went into a summer internship, and that really helped me mature, just my personality and everything, all by itself. And then later on, 2020, this past summer, 2023, I started maturing in my faith with God, and I was able to learn more about how to pray and how to pray over people and how to give people words and all this stuff. God kind of just took me back, and he was like, Ruth, people are gonna say things anywhere you go. You cannot let what somebody says affect how you are in the church and how you are doing what God that I have called you to do. But doing the things that God has called you to do and going through that path is something that you do want to go through. But including God in your everyday life is something that is very important as well, that I've learned is that, like, okay, so if I'm gonna do this, if I'm gonna be mad at somebody, I'm gonna pray about it before I go telling my mentor or telling my parents or telling my sister or something about it. Like, I'm gonna pray about it and be like, okay, like, let's just go, let's just have a one-on-one conversation. I'm upset right now. God is gonna bring you and he's gonna reveal to you of what he has for you, and just wait, because God will do it. Well, that is the end of our podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the post notifications, but also follow us on our Instagram and Threads. My Instagram is Ruth Rivera Photos on Instagram and Threads. And follow the Generation of Revival of Gen Z on Instagram and Threads. Hope you guys have a blessed
can't be touched by fire. Fast forward to the grown things now. I'm working on them soul things now. Forgiving all your old ways, but it's harder on the cold days.